and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me to break down all that was in Week 5 and turn the page and start looking at Week 6 is Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
Hey, Kyle. Man, we're starting to see some separation in these teams this season. I mean, last night's game is Buffalo really the best team in the AFC, and then
Sure as hell playing like it.
Ridiculous shootout in LA between the Chargers and the Browns. Holy crap.
Yeah, Week 5 was nutty. Lots of stuff happened. Obviously, we'll run through all the injuries you need to know. Obviously, we'll talk the major line movement, the spreads, the totals, recap our betting card, all that good stuff. But I wanted to say a quick shout out to everybody who joined or who checked out our latest episode.
Yes.
Seeing good numbers. Appreciate everybody smashing the thumbs up. Appreciate everybody subscribing. If you've not done so already, please make sure you're doing that. If you're enjoying the content, it really does do a lot. Let us know down in the comments what game you are targeting for Week 6, whether it's a side, whether it's total, whether it's a player prop. We're always looking for options. Obviously, each Tuesday we recap the week that was and look ahead, and then kind of get some of those early line numbers. And then obviously we come back on Friday, hit our best bets, hit our player props, and let you know what bets we've made. So, Brian Twining, let's jump into it and let's talk the week that was. We'll start with a betting card recap, and very nice bounce back by you after going all in on Tom Brady and the Bucks.
Yes.
You rebounded very nicely. Jets Falcons over 46. That was a win. Texans
That
plus
was
9.
scary.
Dude, Texans, I think, might have been one of the easiest games.
Yes.
They were winning that game for some of it. That we got, I think that's a prime example of why you want to join us earlier in the week if you can. We told you to bet it at 9 by kickoff. It was like 7 or 7.5.
Yeah, I think it was like 7.5 in most spots.
So that was a rocking chair win. You had your teaser of the week hit. Dolphins Bucks over 42. Bears plus 11.5. They won outright. Cowboys -1. They crushed. And good thing you teased the Browns, because that's 7.5, despite looking like a win. And I was like, why didn't I bet the Browns? I liked them all week. The Chargers ended up pulling that game out, which I thought was pretty wild, and that for that total to get into the 80s was pretty insane. Nick Chubb longest rush, 17.5 yards. That was done in the first or second quarter?
Second rush of the game.
Yeah, so that was an easy cash. We love the spot there. And then your only loss was Justin Fields passing yards, which I think that had to do more with kind of how that game played out, and that the Bears just kind of having a decent lead, and Matt Nagy being a doofus. So that's your card. I went 3-1-1. I pushed with the Bengals. I don't know how to feel about it. There was points where Evan McPherson I thought was going to get me the outright win. I thought at points that Mason Crosby, okay, well, he's going to make this field goal, and didn't make it. And then I was worried when it went into overtime that somehow Aaron Rodgers, because of all the missed field goals, was just going to go for the touchdown, and then I was going to lose that game. Ended up being a push. Wipe my hands clean. That could never happen. Yep. I'm good with that. I went with the under in the Jets and Falcons. That did not go as well. You obviously went over and won that head-to-head there. Steelers Broncos got to the over. That and the Texans Patriots, both totals under 40. Both went over. Like I said, I like to traditionally, if the total is really low or really high, I like to go low when it's low and go high when it's high. But that was it didn't make sense. I thought both these offenses could play well, and Teddy Bridgewater playing, I think, helped it a little bit too. But that was an easy one. I also was on the Nick Chubb. I went over 82.5. I think he doubled that up, like 160, 170 yards. So
yeah, I think it was like 163 on the ground or something.
Yep. And then hit Josh Allen on his rushing prop. I think that was over before the lightning delay. So I felt pretty good about that. Also went two 2-0-1 in my picks column over on Fake Pigskin, so make sure you check that out. I had Pittsburgh on the, I think +2, 2.5. I forget what I had. Had that, had the Bengals, which was the push, and then had Josh Allen. So usually there's some crossover. Sometimes I'll throw an extra pick or two on there. So make sure you're heading over to fakepigskin.com and checking that out, as well as it's me and another writer, Aaron Marcotti. We went, I think, 5-0-1 this week, 6-0
Wow,
last
that's
week.
nice.
We're on legitimate fire. I think we're like 22-3 or something the last like 6 weeks. I don't know, something insane. So 5 weeks, I guess it would be. So make sure you check it out each and every week as well. But let's kind of, I guess before we dive into injuries, Brian, you know, we talked about kind of that Browns team. It was, I think, if you're someone who wants to back the Browns kind of going forward, I think that was actually a good sign that even in games where the Chargers clearly pushed them and could score lots of points, obviously you expect their defense to play a little bit better, but even when they run the ball, even when, you know, Baker was able to do enough, obviously couldn't get there when it mattered most, but was able to put up a 40 burger on the Chargers defense. Pretty good sign of if you see them favored by a good amount or maybe getting one too many points against a really good team, that they could hang in there and even have a chance to win the game outright.
Yeah, the one thing about the Browns though that worries me going forward is the fact that they, minus Jarvis Landry, they don't have an alpha on the outside. And if anybody is able to stifle their running game, they're going to be in major trouble, because when you have to put the game in Baker Mayfield's hands, I mean,
Odell should be that guy. 2 weeks ago, he had him open several times and completely missed. This week, he ran routes on 90% of his drop backs, and still only got like 9% of targets. I don't understand if they just don't like him. If there's something there, if it just doesn't click, like send Odell somewhere else and get something that you can use. Have Rashard Higgins or Donovan Peoples-Jones or something run those routes. Njoku and Austin Hooper both ran routes, but Njoku obviously had the big touchdown. But yeah, this is a team that wants to run the ball. Stefanski's doing a phenomenal job with that offense and doing some really good things. Obviously, when Myles Garrett and Jadeveon are banged up a little bit, things don't look as good. But I'm still optimistic. I'm a lot more optimistic on the Browns, even with Baker's struggles, than I thought I would be.
yeah, I think just because of the style of offense that they play, they're going to be in games and they're not going to be blown out of them. And I think that's like a good segue into their matchup for this upcoming week, going up against the 5-0 Cardinals, who offer another tremendous test for their defense. But we did see Arizona kind of look susceptible this weekend against a rush heavy attack with San Francisco. So what is that going to look like against a team like Cleveland?
Yeah, we will definitely talk about that in our Bet Now segment, because that will be spoiler alert, that will be on the card. Any other teams really impress you? The Dolphins or the Panthers Eagles game was interesting to me. From everything saying take the Eagles, even though I liked the Panthers getting the 3 points at home. Everybody was, the 30% of the bets, 65% of the money. That's usually when I see that big of a difference. It means take that. Panthers were winning most of that game. Jalen Hurts pulled that game out of his butt and managed to get a win. The Dolphins or the Vikings Lions game was probably the most frustrating for me, as the Vikings had a 10-point lead late in the fourth quarter, and I was feeling pretty good. I had taken the Vikings minus the 10. I was like, okay, Jared Goff makes a dumb mistake. We get a late field goal. We cover this number. Everything's golden. And yet the Vikings were the ones making the mistake. Madison fumbles. They end up in the end zone. And now all of a sudden the Vikings have to go down and kick a game-winning field goal in a game that should never have been that close. So that was definitely frustrating for me.
Yeah, Minnesota's having issues closing out games this season.
Yeah. Well, and I don't understand. I don't know if they just they saw, Detroit's coming to town, we don't have to do anything, we don't put anything on tape. I don't understand the game plan there, because we've seen them, especially without Dalvin Cook, put the ball in Kirk Cousins' hands and torch that defense.
Well,
and they just didn't seem to want to do that or couldn't do that. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I think the most telling stat I saw this morning tweeted out was that the Minnesota Vikings lead the NFL averaging over 8.5 yards to go on third downs,
Yeah.
which means that they are very predictable on first and second down. In all likelihood, they're probably just going super old school rush, pass.
Mhm.
And they really need to open up this offense, start throwing on first down with freaking Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson,
Yeah.
who Detroit could not cover yesterday.
Right. They need to look like the Titans did last year.
Yes.
Run a lot of play action
Play
early.
action on
It
first
opens
down.
up
Like,
things for whoever you want to put back there, Dalvin or Madison.
exactly.
And it'll make your offense so much more efficient, help your defense,
Yes.
all that stuff. Your Cowboys look very legit. Obviously, Daniel Jones, this will be a good segue into injuries. Daniel Jones getting murdered. Saquon Barkley having injury issues again.
Kenny
But
Galladay left the game.
Kenny Galladay. Kadarius Toney looked like he might get banged up, ended up being able to finish. We'll see. Everything should be good there. But your defense looks incredible. Obviously, the offense, we didn't have questions. Zeke looked really good yesterday. I think Dallas is a very legitimate contender in the NFC.
Yeah, I gotta say, through 5 weeks now, I think me trying to downplay their performance so far this season is over with. They are a legit contender in the NFC with what they've been able to do. And although turnovers aren't necessarily a good indication of how well your defense is playing, the fact that they are forcing these turnovers, forcing teams into these decisions is something that it has been they've been the best in the NFL over the last 10 or so games going back to the end of last season. So that they are for real, and they are a team to take notice of in any futures right now, I think.
Yeah, obviously, you don't want to rely on them on a week to week basis because
Yeah.
they tend to be a little fluky. But we've seen with teams like Miami last year that you can kind of force those, or even was it New England 2 years ago where they were like
Yeah.
dominant, getting turnovers every single
Ridiculous
week.
turnovers. Yeah.
So that they can be, yes, they're fluky on a season to season basis, and can be on a week to week basis. You can definitely utilize them. And especially when you have an offense like the Cowboys have, I think it's going to force teams to push the ball, teams to do things that will give them more opportunities to potentially create some of those turnovers. So,
Yeah,
great
it's
to
really
see.
interesting too with their defense because even though they're not really getting sacks, they're putting a ton of pressure on the opposing quarterbacks, which is what's forcing these bad throws and or putting them in the situation to throw the interceptions. So
Yeah,
the
and
sacks will probably come
yep.
with this kind of pressure, which should just open up the defense to even better performances
Right,
going
and with your
forward.
secondary playing as well as it is, it's great to force those
You
throws
mean
that are.
Deion Sanders back there? That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Trayvon Diggs might be the best Diggs in the NFL, and nobody thought that could happen.
Yeah.
Let's shift our focus and let's talk some of those injuries. Lots and lots of injuries. We'll start with the Thursday night. Russell Wilson, his finger, he was trying to put his hand straight, and his finger went whip. Not exactly what you're looking for. He posted on social media looking like he, I don't know. Anyways, looking like
Look
about a
like
six
Bernie
week,
from Weekend at Bernie's.
6 week timetable for his return. Geno Smith will be starting in the meantime. This is also a team dealing with Chris Carson being banged up, which shocker, he's always banged up. So for now, it looks like it's going to be the Geno Smith, Alex Collins show. Obviously, still have DK Metcalf outside, still have Tyler Lockett outside. So, Geno will definitely have like the best opportunity he's had during his NFL run, but still not ideal for kind of a team that we thought could be legitimate contenders in the NFC. Obviously, whenever you have Russ, you want to throw the ball, you want to have a good offense, whatever. I guess just in general, like, could this situation get really bad where we're targeting, like, we're betting on teams against Seattle because they're just going to kind of pack it in and not have the season that we thought. Maybe this is the year Pete Carroll gets fired. Obviously, they still owe the Jets a first round pick, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
Could things get really ugly in Seattle, and this is finally the year that they make the change? Maybe Russ ends up somewhere else next year. Like, there's a path for this to go horribly, horribly wrong this year.
Well, on that note, looking at their upcoming schedule, they play at Pittsburgh this week, which against that defense with
Yeah.
Geno Smith playing quarterback. Not going to happen. And then they host New Orleans, who all their faults. By this time, we might see Michael Thomas back.
Yeah,
We
Michael
might see
Thomas.
them get their offensive lineman back. We might see them get Marcus Davenport back. Like, and then they get Jacksonville, which yes, they should possibly win that game at home. But then coming out of the bye, they play at Green Bay, Arizona, and then maybe Russ is back for that Arizona or Washington the next week. This is going to be a really rough stretch for Seattle, and I think it's going under.
Well, and with Arizona as good as they are, and the Rams as good as they are, and I think the Niners will ultimately be better by the time Russ
They
comes
looked
in.
good yesterday.
And they looked good yesterday. Their
Yeah.
defense is still really good. I think that things will be better for them. They might see the writing on the wall and say it's not worth it. Like, obviously there's an extra playoff spot, so maybe they're a little more willing to push it than maybe in a normal year. But there is serious cause for concern and serious things to consider when you're looking at Seattle. And I think, I do my look ahead lines when we dive into those numbers. And I made what I make. I made Seattle I made the Steelers a 2.5 point favorite at home against Seattle, and they are currently a 4.5 point. Steelers are 4.5 point favorites. So tells you a lot about what the expectations are, and maybe that number actually ends up being too low with Geno under center.
Yeah,
We'll have to.
This is actually one of those lines that I've already gone to the counter with, just because with how good Pittsburgh's defense and how good their pass rush can be against this Seattle offensive line. Just Geno Smith is going to be starting for the Seattle Seahawks. The same Geno Smith who was worse than what Sam Darnold did in New York. Geno Smith. I mean,
and as bad as Big Ben and the Steelers offenses looked, they actually looked pretty decent yesterday against a really good Denver defense. Denver's solid
Najee
on
Harris
the
over
side of the
100
ball.
rushing yards yesterday.
Yeah, so Najee Harris looked good. Deontay Johnson looked good. Claypool got the touchdown. They still have Freiermuth. Like, they have enough pieces where I think they'll be fine long term. Speaking of the Niners, George Kittle is got placed on short term IR. He's going to miss probably close to a month. Not ideal for, like, he's really important to what they do, run blocking, obviously as a pass catcher. But not what you want to see. Ross Dwelly is the short term replacement. The Giants lost half their offense yesterday. Daniel Jones got knocked out. We'll see what his status is. Barkley injured his ankle. At least a couple weeks for that. Devontae Booker in the short term. Kenny Golladay got hurt. There's a myriad of injuries there. So the Giants have gone from a team I kind of like to get when they're getting a few too many points to a team that I think I'm just going to avoid completely.
Yeah, I mean, especially coming into this next game, if Daniel Jones is not there and we're putting our faith in Mike Glennon minus all of those pieces on the outside,
you have to start one in fantasy: Mike Glennon or Geno Smith, or Nathan Peterman if Derek Carr got banged up and came, but he ended up coming back, so he was fine. But I'll let you pick him too. It's like John Gruden's it's like his birthday. He loves all those guys.
Honestly, I'd probably go with Mike Glennon just because of the style of offense that New York runs. It'd be more.
I think I might go Geno just because he has Tyler Lockett and DK. But yeah, it's gross.
I don't know. That would be a let me just maybe not start a quarterback this week.
Just take a 0 instead of taking a negative.
Yeah.
Talk about Miami really quick. It looks like Tua will be back this week, but he will be without Devontae Parker. They'll have Jalen Waddle. It looks like we might be Preston Williams season, as Will Fuller, shocking, is banged up. They still have Gesicki, who may see a little more work. Obviously, they were able to lean a little more in the running game, but Dolphins in London with Tua's first game back. I don't know if I want to be part of that. Damien Harris got hurt, chest rib injury. Obviously, I think he had a fumble later in that game too.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to chalk that up to Bill Belichick antics of you fumbled, you're out.
Yeah. Another knee injury for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who got injured on the Sunday night game. A couple weeks for him. I guess of all these, the major injuries, obviously, anytime a quarterback goes out, that's a major injury. Any other injuries that you're keeping an eye on in terms of you might be willing to either fade this team more or be less willing to back them because of these injuries?
I think it's easily the Giants situation because what we saw them do in New Orleans was pretty impressive when they
Yeah.
had even minus Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard, the arrival of Kadarius Toney, Kenny Galladay looked like he was healthy, Saquon looked like Saquon, and now they're going to be back to being, like one of the worst offensive teams in the NFL with a bunch of backups, starting for them. And that puts a huge hit on their prospects of covering any sort of line. I mean, looking ahead to this upcoming game against the Rams, they're double-digit dog already before we even know, real indication of injury statuses. And I think that, I mean, they're not going to cover that minus all of these guys.
Yeah. Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce also got hurt for the Chiefs. We'll keep an eye on that situation. I think they'll both be fine, but is worth keeping an eye on. Taysom Hill got knocked out.
He did.
So Jameis Winston is, although it is interesting. We've been ping ponging with New Orleans all year long. Does the bye week count as their loss, or do we skip this week and they'll actually lose next week?
Well, oh no, I think this is going to count as their loss because next week is the game against Seattle, which they should crush.
Right, but they're going to be a big favorite, and then Seattle's actually going to win that game outright, and it's not going to make any sense.
That would be very disturbing.
Very, very much. Okay, I think that's all the major injuries. Let's look at those lines and talk about the ones we're going to bet now, and I'll start with the one that I've already got down on. I took the Browns. Let me see. Let me pull up I think I took them minus 2.5 against Arizona. I think they're absolutely in the right spot. I think Kyler Murray is hurt. I watched that game against San Francisco very, very, very closely. I was, on the big screen. A little nugget, a little piece of info last year. Kyler Murray got hurt late in the season last year too. This is all per our friends over at Draft Sharks and Jared Smola. A season ago, in the 10 games prior to his injury, he averaged 264.4 passing yards and 1.9 touchdowns, completing 68.3% of his passes on 7.5 yards attempt. In the 5 games post-injury, his numbers dropped to 248 passing yards, 1.4 touchdowns, 65%, and 6.4. So he lost a whole yard. His ball did not look nearly as good. He significantly underthrew to DeAndre Hopkins, who made an incredible play to come back about 5 yards to get the catch. His rushing production also sunk after the injury. Getting 9.2 yards, 60 yards, or 9.2 carries, 60 yards, and a touchdown before, to 7.8 carries, 40 yards, and 0.2 touchdowns after. And he went from being the QB1 in fantasy to being barely in the top 12 over that final 5 games. He was really important to what they were doing offensively, and he was making things go. And obviously James Conner and Chase Edmonds in the running game were doing a lot, but this offense was cooking because of what Kyler could do, because of the unique things they could do with Christian Kirk and Rondell Moore and obviously DeAndre Hopkins. Going forward, if his arm is hampered, if he is not going to be the same guy, I think there's serious cause for concern with Arizona. I think it's going to put more pressure on their old dudes up front. And I think Cleveland can absolutely cover the 2.5 this week. And I would be jumping on that now because I expect that to go based on the way the betting numbers are saying. I expect that to clear 3.5 easy, 58% of the bets, 94% of the money as of recording on Monday.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the side of Cleveland here with Arizona going to the dog pound against a team who will run you over. And when you looked at yesterday's game, Kyler Murray was under a tremendous amount of pressure. And now, I mean, Cleveland, if they can get Jadeveon Clowney back and Myles Garrett checks out okay, they're going up against the NFL sack leader. And I mean, if Kyler Murray's banged up at all, yesterday limited to 1 rushing yard, which could you imagine saying that at the beginning of this season with what he was doing? So they're going to be in some trouble if he's limited at all in terms of even throwing the ball. But even more importantly, if they remove him from the rushing attack, they're going to be in some trouble in terms of trying to move the ball here. And especially if they fall behind in this game, it's probably going to get, I don't want to say ugly because they're 5-0, but we are really going to see the true first test for Arizona, I think, this week.
Yep. I like our Carolina Panthers at home against Minnesota this week. They're only 1.5 point favorites. I love that. I think there's a ton of value on that number.
As long as Sam Darnold doesn't revert back to seeing ghosts.
Yeah. I mean, if Sammy Ducks comes back, then it may be no good for him. I will be betting the Tennessee Titans minus or plus the 5.5, 4.5, whatever you can get it at. I will be betting the Tennessee Titans money line. I think this is a phenomenal spot against Buffalo. The Bills are incredible. I think they're probably the best team in the AFC, potentially the best team in the league. But coming to Nashville on a Monday night after a huge primetime win against KC, letdown spot. They come in, the Titans get the victory at home, and everyone is going to be all over the Bills. I will take Titans plus whatever. I will take the Titans money line. I will put that on my card right now.
That is a bold take, especially seeing what Buffalo was able to do in Kansas City. Now, Kansas City has the worst defense in the NFL, but Tennessee also has a very bad defense.
It's better than it's been. It's progressing in the right direction. Christian Fultner is very good. He did get banged up a little bit at the end of that game. I want to keep an eye on practice reports for him because he is important for what they want to do. But you put him on Steph Diggs.
That was Urban Meyer's led Jacksonville Jaguars offense who decided to use Carlos Hyde in a 4th and 1 situation.
Sure.
At James Robinson rushing for over 140 yards, and he leaves Carlos Old Man Hyde in there.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, Devin Singletary and Zach Moss aren't going to run all over us like James Robinson. So I like that spot quite a bit. Anything else?
I don't know. I can definitely see this being not necessarily a letdown spot, but one of those games that coming off of a huge victory on the road, having to go on the road once again in a primetime game, being one of those really difficult matchups.
Yeah, and if you don't want the money line, I don't blame anybody who doesn't go there. I'm a Titans fan, so but I don't like betting on my team unless I think it's a good spot.
Yeah,
you're getting 2-1 basically. I do think that +5, +5.5 is a no brainer. I think the Bills, if they win, it's a field goal game, and they cash that one. We got another London game with the Dolphins heading over to London with Jacksonville. Jacksonville +3.5, I think makes a lot of sense. Obviously in London, I think the Jags offense and defense have shown flashes. I know Urban Meyer's kind of a doofus, but
what do you think the chances are Urban Meyer is left in London?
God, I would love for him to get Lane Kiffin and just left.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. He's gonna get the USC
based on his history, I don't think it would be crazy for him to not be on the team flight. Maybe there's an Ohio over there that he needs to go find some bar to get a little friendly at. The Eagles +7 is interesting. They're getting everyone's all over Tampa Bay, and that line opened 7.5, came down to 7.
Thursday night spot on the road. Brady dealing with a thumb injury, apparently.
Giants are getting 10.5 at home versus the Rams. The Rams crush them.
Yeah.
Depending on how you feel about the Colts tonight, the Texans +10 might be a number to jump on just because. And obviously, you'll probably hear this afterwards. But if the Colts play well,
yes,
that could be a number that that balloons. But if the Colts struggle and they are 7-point underdogs right now, This line could be, we could see a lot of a similar situation as we saw last week, where it's 9.5 or 10 early in the week, and by game time, it's like a touchdown.
Yeah, the Colts game is one of the ones that I'm really going to keep my eye on, because at home with their defense, with how good they play going up against this Texans team on the road, I expect Indianapolis to dominate this game. But I'm really hoping that Baltimore is able to kind of muscle through the Colts and, basically dominate this game to get this number underneath the double digits, which is where it'll be, very appetizing in terms of going to the counter with.
And like you mentioned, I think the Cowboys -4.5 make a lot of sense. I think there's a chance that the Patriots are just kind of toast.
Well, New England would have to play better, or very similar, if not better, game than what they did against Tampa Bay, because the Cowboys seem to be maybe not as good of a team as Tampa, but maybe more well-rounded coming into this game than Tampa was in their matchup with all their injuries they dealt with. So
yeah,
in that spot, it's going to be difficult to slow down the Cowboys offense.
Yeah, and I kind of like the Raiders getting 3 points on the road. I think they bounce back this week after an ugly loss to the Bears. I think they're pretty good, and I think the Broncos are just meh. Although there's a chance that both those teams are kind of meh, and the Chargers win the division. The Chiefs may get a wild card. Where are you at with the Chiefs? Like,
that's so funny you say that. I was looking at
this will be our
Super
final
Bowl futures
kind of
this
thing
morning
before we get out of here. But like, if you are like me, very optimistic still about what the Chiefs are, what they can be. Obviously, their defense has questions. But if you think Mahomes will be fine, like his numbers have been incredible for 4 or 5 games, whatever it's
I
been.
think he still leads the NFL in QBR or something too. So
I think the Chiefs are still really good. You can bet Mahomes at a very discounted MVP number. You can bet the Chiefs at a very discounted Super Bowl number. Speaking of Super Bowl numbers, I saw the Titans and Niners are both 40-1 to win the Super Bowl. I like that number for the Niners. I know it's ugly now, but I think getting Trey Lance in at this point, getting the Niners to a bye week, I believe. Yeah, this week we do have our first round of byes. We have Atlanta, we have San Francisco, we have the Jets, and we have New Orleans. But I think the Niners getting on a bye week, a full week of Trey Lance preparation. As long as they stick with him, I think if things they kind of figure things out. I think if Kyler Murray is banged up and struggles a little bit, the Cardinals kind of fade. I think the Niners could easily be in the conversation for this division, at least a wild card. And I think they could be one of those really hot teams going into the playoffs, because I think their defense is still incredible. I know there's question marks around the offensive line. We'll see when get George Kittle back. But I think they're being smart about, rather than pushing Kittle, they're like, hey, sit down, take a couple weeks off so we can have you for the more important stretch run. I think that's a tremendous value for a team that was 15-1 to win the Super Bowl, now down to 30 or 40. I think there's value there. But what are you doing with Kansas City? Like, do you believe what we've seen so far is what we're going to get all year long, or do you think there's a buying opportunity on a lot of their props, a lot of their outrights, a lot of futures, that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, when you look at Kansas City, they can only get better on defense. I mean, they're like last in the league in pretty much every single defensive metric right now. And if they can, correct some of this even minutely and be able to stop teams at all, they're still scoring points. I mean, outside of yesterday's game against what is possibly the best defense in the NFL, Kansas City is still scoring over 30 points a game.
Yeah.
I mean, the defense is allowing over 30 points a game too, but those were against Cleveland, Baltimore, the Chargers. Yes, the Eagles, that was kind of blah, blah, but against the Bills. So they've played 4 of the most explosive and most efficient offenses in the NFL.
They've also played possibly 3 or 4 of the best defenses in all of the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at their schedule coming up here, their next 6 weeks. So they go to Washington. They should probably beat them. It's a road game, but Washington's not going to be able to keep up. They play your Titans in Tennessee, which they're going to have a difficult time stopping Derrick Henry. They play the Giants. That should be a win. They host Green Bay, which that could be a very interesting game. They go to the Raiders. I still think Kansas City's better than I almost said Oakland. And then they host the Cowboys, which that's going to be an epic.
I think
matchup.
they could go 5-0 in over that stretch, and everybody's feeling much better. All of a sudden, they beat
Yeah.
your Dallas Cowboys.
And they're 7.5 to 1 right now offshore, close, in between 7 and 8 to 1 right now to win the
And they
Super
were
Bowl.
like 3 or 4 to 1
They
when the
were
season
3 or
started.
3.5 to 1 at the beginning of the season. This
And
is
then
the
they
buy now spot.
And then they close Broncos, Raiders. You don't love the matchup on the road against the Chargers. Home for Steelers, or on the road for Bengals, on the road for Broncos. They could lose 2 or 3 games at most the rest of the way. And
I mean, it's still the Chiefs.
Sure.
Are you going to doubt Patrick Mahomes? No.
Yeah, I think if you believe in the Chiefs, like I do, like I think Brian does,
Yep.
and you want to get in on some of their future stuff, now is the buying point, because it won't get lower than this. And if you don't think they're that good, then just fade them each and every week, and you'll probably win money. They are a team that has issues covering. I'm curious to see if Vegas starts adjusting the lines for the Chiefs, and if we're able to get better numbers.
Let me just say, I think my favorite future Super Bowl market right now, though, is quite possibly Baltimore. 14 to 1. They're on a hot streak. They should win tonight, go to 4 to 1. Then their next 3 games are at home with a bye week mixed in there. And then they go to Miami, Chicago, and then they play 4 of their last 6 games. No, 3 of their last 5 games are at home, and they finish with two home games against the Rams and the Steelers. So Baltimore, if they're getting healthy, because they're still pretty beat up, and they're going to be getting guys back too.
Yeah, I'd much rather, if we're staying in the division, I'd much rather Cleveland at 16. I'm really impressed with what I saw. I think if Kansas City
Lamar
is banged
so
up,
much better than Baker Mayfield.
well, but it's not. It doesn't matter. Baker doesn't have to win games. Lamar does. And I think Rashad Bateman could be a difference maker. But I think if we're looking at what the Chiefs do poorly, and if imagine Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt going into Kansas City and just running all over them in the AFC Championship game, I think it's very, very possible. I love San Francisco at 40 to 1. I think that's a number that is insane. They should be, obviously they haven't played great to this part, and there's lots of questions, but 2025 is where their number should be, and the fact that they're 40 is kind of insane.
It is interesting too to see the Chargers still sitting at 16 to 1 when week in and week out they've proved.
I think they're very legit. I think that I would take them over Baltimore too. Not only because you're getting a better number, but because I think they're a better team. Now that bet could feel really dumb at the end of the season when Keenan Allen is hurt and Joey Bosa is hurt and Mike Williams is banged up and Derwin James. But as long as they're healthy and that offensive line is good and they are able to run the ball and their defense is playing like it can, I mean, they've already went to Kansas City and won. They've had impressive wins. I think the Chargers are a very, very legit team, and if they win the division, which it looks like they're going to, at least at this point.
Yeah, they're
long way to go, obviously, but
yeah,
that number is getting cut in half as we head into the playoffs. So when I'm betting futures, I'm always looking for opportunity and value, and I want to get a number, and then I want that number to be half or a quarter or whatever heading into the playoffs. I think the Chargers, I think the Niners, and potentially the Browns offer the most value based upon what DraftKings is holding up right now.
How do you feel about the MVP market right now? I know Kyler coming into this week was probably the overwhelming favorite with what they were able to do there in Arizona. But now with him not playing as well, them still winning, you got Tom Brady out here throwing 5 touchdowns and over 400 yards. You got Dak Prescott continuing to limit turnovers, leading the Cowboys to a 4-1 record, and then you have Mahomes doing what he's doing.
Mahomes at 20 to 1 is just stupid. Like, he's been playing fine, and if they start winning games like we think we can, he will absolutely be in the conversation. Yeah, I will.
Especially with how bad their defense is, I
Yeah.
think the voters would take that into account and make it even more prominent that he is the reason why they won all those games.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he makes sense. I think Derek Carr at 65 if the Raiders can rebound and play well, but they're the Raiders, so I don't know if we want to necessarily get there. I'm just looking for Teddy. I don't understand how Teddy Bridgewater is at 50. Like, what has Teddy Bridgewater done that makes him an MVP candidate for anything? Like,
Lead the NFL in completion percentage, even though they've gotten worse in
over
third
Nick
down
Chubb, over Derrick Henry,
percentage.
over Baker Mayfield, over Joe Burrow, Taylor Heineke somehow 100-1. DraftKings is just, I don't know. Yeah, I would bet Patrick Mahomes. If I wasn't betting Patrick Mahomes, I would bet. I mean, if you really like Baltimore and you think they are a Super Bowl team, I think betting Lamar at 25 makes sense. But yeah, I wouldn't bet Josh Allen. I wouldn't bet Kyler Murray, and I wouldn't bet. I mean, Dak at 7. If I had to bet one of those three, I would rather bet Dak than Josh Allen or Kyler Murray. But if the Cowboys defense is going to keep playing this good, I don't know if he'll necessarily put up the numbers that we need him to amass to be in the conversation with the Staffords, with the Mahomes, with the Josh Allens. You missed the market on Allen, you missed the market on Murray. So jumping in now, I mean, you can jump in, but it's your money, your bets. I don't see any value at this point with those teams, so I don't get it. It wouldn't make sense to me. So. If you're still with us, make sure you smash that thumbs up. Make sure you hit subscribe if you have not done so. Let us know down in the comments who you're targeting in week 6, and let us know your favorite futures bet. Super Bowl, MVP, Rookie of the Year, whatever you want. Let us know. And make sure you join us Friday for our best bets for week 6, for our player props for week 6, and all other good times and shenanigans. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.